Coffee Clan, welcome back to my channel. So, for today's video, we are doing another sit down video because I really liked the last sit down video. Like, I thought it was peaceful and it was a good video and it was a good filming space. A lot of you guys said that you liked the background of the Christmas tree and everything, so I figured we would just keep that going because I also like Christmas and my Christmas tree, so we're gonna do another sit down video. Today's video is all about caffeine. Coffee, tea, just caffeine in general. And I actually have some notes right here, so if you see me looking down, I'm just referencing my notes so that I don't get the information wrong. I did so much research on this and spent a full day preparing for this video, so everything that I say is accurate, and I promise that I'm not putting my own opinions in here. If I do, I'll say this is my opinion, but I'm gonna go over everything that I found and we're gonna learn some interesting caffeine facts together. So I do have my coffee as always. This is gonna be kind of a longer video, so grab some coffee or tea. I'll allow tea for this video and we're gonna get right into it. Okay, so before we can break down and figure out facts about caffeine, let's first go over the definition of caffeine. So what is caffeine? And the definition that I got offline is a crystalline compound that is found especially in tea and coffee plants and is a stimulant of the central nervous system. So that being said, you can obviously find caffeine in a lot of different things in today's foods and drinks and everything, but what we usually think of when we think of caffeine is coffee or tea. And that brought me to my next question. What is more caffeinated, coffee or tea? And I actually found that brewed coffee has more caffeine than steeped tea. However, in the wild or the wilderness, tea leaves do actually contain more caffeine than coffee beans, which I was surprised about. So if you're going off of what has more caffeine in general, tea leaves, but if you're going off of what has more caffeine once it's made, coffee does. And then that brought me to the question of what has more caffeine. I'm like shaking because I'm drinking so much caffeine today. That brought me to my question, how much caffeine does espresso have in it? Because I know that a normal cup of coffee wouldn't have as much caffeine as an espresso shot. So I said, well, what has more caffeine? And for 1 fluid ounce, it has 64 milligrams of caffeine, which is quite a lot. It's quite a bit, especially if you are... Caffeine actually has to do a lot with genetics, so you can handle more caffeine possibly than someone else. And I've seen that like too. I know some people that can drink 8 cups of coffee a day and be fine. I personally can only have 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day and I'm like, woohoo, hyper, which is crazy because I love coffee, but I always monitor myself and I think that has to do a lot with genetics, and that's also what the internet said. And I know you can't trust the internet all the time, but I did look it up a lot and did a lot of research, and it did always say that it does, based off of genetics, how much caffeine a body can handle. So why is coffee stronger or has more caffeine than tea? And it's because it's extracted more than tea during the brewing process, so it's brought out more. So coffee has twice as much caffeine than tea, and that kind of brought me to the question after I started thinking of espresso, well, what has more caffeine? A drip coffee or an espresso shot? And if you guys, like, I've heard the argument a lot that people think that drip coffee has more caffeine because of the concentrated amount than an espresso shot. So I did some research and here's what I found. Coffee has 2 times more caffeine than espresso, but that is due to a much larger serving size. So a drip coffee would have more caffeine because it is in a bigger cup, whereas an espresso shot is a smaller concentrated amount. Because espresso is served in much smaller amounts, it doesn't have as much caffeine as a drip coffee would have. But if you're comparing espresso to a drip coffee in the same concentration, like if you were dripping coffee into a small cup and you had an espresso shot, then the espresso shot would have more caffeine in it because of the volume size, whereas if you're getting a drip coffee, which is bigger than an espresso shot, the drip coffee would have more caffeine. So let's move on. After I did some research on that, when I used to work at Starbucks, I learned that the blonde coffee actually had more caffeine in it than the dark roast. And that was kind of confusing to me because when you think of it, you think that a light roast or a blonde roasted coffee would have less caffeine, and a lot of people would order the blonde roast because they thought it had less caffeine, and that's actually not true. Most blonde roast, the lighter it is, the higher caffeine concentrate it has. And I know that as a fact with Starbucks blonde roast, that is the highest concentrate of caffeine you can get. I don't know about other coffee shops because I couldn't find much information about that. I'm pretty sure it's the same, but I'm gonna go off of facts for this video. So a blonde coffee has more caffeine count than a dark roast or a medium roast would. So going off of the Starbucks drinks, the Starbucks blonde has 360 milligrams per 16 ounce. The Pike's Place has 310 milligrams per 16 ounce, and the dark roast has 260 milligrams per 16 ounce. So the lighter the bean, the higher the caffeine concentrate. So dark roast actually has the least amount of caffeine than all of the other roasts at Starbucks. That got me thinking, okay, so caffeine is actually really good for you in moderation. How much caffeine is bad for you, and what does it do? What are the bad parts of caffeine, and how can it affect your body negatively? So caffeine is good for you because it blocks inhibiting brain juice, and that increases dopamine. Adenosine is a chemical, or adenosine, I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Okay, Google, how do you pronounce adenosine?
Adenosine.
Adenosine. Okay, so adenosine is a chemical that accumulates in your brain over the course of the day and makes you tired. So caffeine closely resembles adenosine, and it blocks the receptors, keeping your brain from feeling fatigued. It gives you a kick of dopamine as well. So it happens in the prefrontal cortex, which is where your planning and cognitive skills come from. So caffeine can be good because if you're feeling tired, it's a good pick-me-up, which I think we all know. But hopefully you learned a little bit about how it works and why it does that, because it resembles adenosine. I'm never gonna get that right. Caffeine actually is not instant. It does take about 20 to 30 minutes to take effect, which is why in the morning when you drink your coffee, you still feel tired for a while. And surprisingly enough, the reason why you can drink caffeine and feel it right away is not because it's actually working, but it's because we associate caffeine and coffee, the smell, the taste, the brewing, just the whole process of your morning routine, we associate that with a good feeling. Awake feeling. And so because of that, even though it's not working in your brain right away, it's working in your body because you're tricking your mind. 20 to 30 minutes after you have it, that's when it starts to make all that dopamine and everything else that it does in your brain. So, according to the FDA, Americans consume 300 milligrams of caffeine per day, which in my opinion is not actually that much. I think that that's a good average amount, and it's because, as you guys remember from earlier, the Starbucks blonde roast is 360 milligram per 16 ounce, which I believe is a grande sized. So for Americans to consume 300 milligrams of caffeine per day is kind of like everyone is getting like a grande blonde roast. I would compare it to that. I don't know. Is that right? Is that math? I don't know. Correct me in the comments down below if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. We're gonna talk about what happens when you have an excessive amount of caffeine, which I need some caffeine before I talk about this. All right. So excessive caffeine. If you have too much caffeine, it can actually disrupt your sleep, your proper adrenal functions, and it can cause heartbeat abnormalities. So we all know that if you drink coffee at night, you're not going to sleep very well. That's common knowledge. I think everyone can get behind that. I know that for me, if I drink too much of it, I start to get headaches, or I feel a little bit run down, drained mentally. Low to moderate consumption of coffee or caffeine doesn't affect, like, it won't cause insomnia, but if you're having like 3 cups of coffee before bed, obviously you're not gonna sleep. So, and it does take several hours to wear off. So let's say that you have a cup of coffee at 7 and you're going to bed at 9. It's not gonna wear off by then. You would probably have to wait till 10 or 11 before it starts to wear off a little bit, and before the dopamine and everything like that kind of wears down a little bit. So caffeine also stimulates neuron activity. So each time you have caffeine, neurons send messages to your pituitary gland, which alerts your adrenals to pump adrenaline and cortisol, which basically puts you in a fight or flight mode. So everything kind of speeds up and you're a little shaky and hyper, which we've all felt that from caffeine before. So I have a hole in my pants. I just realized that. So several cups a day can put your nervous system in red alert. And that's due to what I just said, pumping adrenaline and cortisol, which is our body's natural reaction to sometimes fear or something thrilling is happening. And so when you have too much coffee, it does cause that fight or flight mode, which puts your whole entire body on red alert, crazy, oh my gosh, what's happening? And that's if you have a lot of coffee, which is also why it affects sleep. Also increases your heart rate, and I think that that's just a combination of everything I just talked about. Why it increases your heart rate, everything in your body is going. Different genetics can handle different amounts of caffeine, but I would say that the best way to figure out how much caffeine you can have is just moderate yourself. I personally don't think that anyone really needs more than 2 cups of coffee a day, maybe 3. I wouldn't have any more than that, just because if you're spacing it out throughout the day, I think 3 cups of coffee is good, especially since it takes a couple hours to wear off. I feel like there's no reason to be drinking 4 cups of coffee in the morning and then 4 cups of coffee at night. I just think that's a lot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned some things in this video. I know that it wasn't like a super in-depth video, but I just think that that was some interesting information. I don't want this video to be too long because I think an overload of information is too much. So if you guys want a part B to this video, let me know and I can go over some more facts about coffee. But I did also want to say, don't forget to check out my merch. I do have merch. I have Drink Coffee Travel Often tees. I also have coffee bean tees, and I did just launch some scarves that I knit myself. So check out my website, drinkcoffeetraveloften.com. I'll also have it linked down below for you guys to check out. And if you want, subscribe to my website to get newsletters. I only send out once a month newsletters, and it sometimes has coupons in it or deals or an update on my life and what I've been doing and this channel. Also, speaking of subscribing, don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I'd love to have you become part of my coffee clan. And I just really appreciate you guys, and I really appreciate you guys commenting on my videos and liking my videos. And as this channel grows slowly, but it is growing, I just want to thank you guys so much for supporting my coffee addiction. So that is all for this video. I will see you guys next time, and until then, drink coffee, travel often. I love you. Bye.